All right, so I had a question about the first developers Compass episode, and someone wanted to know exactly how much equity they would need to do a deal like Junction Road. So I just wanted to go through the FISO and show and talk through it, and then talk through what exact things you need to be looking out for. So, all right, here we are here. Let's zoom in a little bit more so we can all see. Maybe a touch more. No, we'll just go there. All right, so pre-purchase costs. So this is stuff like setting up your joint venture agreements, the trust for the deal, and all those sort of things. So we spent 9,054 on this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go equals. And then we're going to click on these as we go and do it. So we spent 9,054 on this, right? So that is the legals for the joint venture agreement, setting up the trust, that's 3,500. Back then, I think this was also setting up a piggy bank trust, so that would have been a little bit more expensive. However, you need to keep in mind that these are 2017 figures, which is a long time ago when it comes to inflation and everything being a lot more expensive now. So 9,000 bucks in pre-purchase costs. Then we had the purchase cost. So we managed to buy this block of land at a 80% loan. So that was 110% deposit. So if you were to purchase something, you need to keep into account what LVR you are going to get. And then essentially that will be how you figure out what this number is. So we put that there, 110, and then we had all of these other sort of little bits and bobs. So we had stamp duty, settlements, agents fee, Pacific Law fees and costs. So Pacific Law is a lawyer for doing the conveyancing. Probably don't need to spend 1,300 bucks on a conveyancer, on a lawyer to do it. However, these days, conveyancer might cost you the same. So, bank check, rego fee, MSA, annual fee, loan processing fee. So, all of these is figures that we needed to go and have. So we go and chuck them in. This is critical that we know these details. So this is something which is a little bit moving. So like you might do a subdivision this time and it costs you 100 grand, and you do a subdivision next time and it costs you 120. So realistically, these figures do move around. However, this is something that you really want to know. Back then, the town planner fees were 4,300, which realistically, when I'm looking at my town planners these days, it's not that bad. So this is the town planning fee to do the subdivision application. So you remember it's a 600 square meter subdivision. Then we have sundry development costs. So this is stuff like the engineering and stuff like that for the subdivision. So we spent 27,000 on that. So we had urban utilities, water and sewer. So we had 10,500 for that. We had a fee from Telstra. We had to do a concrete footpath. So 4,600 bucks is very, very cheap. So I want you to kind of have the names and the people who to look for more than the actual figures, because as we go further down this series, we'll start to see deals getting more and more expensive, and we'll start to see these figures in more detail. So 27,000 483. Then we have the local government fees. So this is like council charging you to do an application for the subdivision, and then survey plan. So the survey plan is the person who goes and does the new lots drawings. So it's like two rectangles, it looks like. However, there is a lot more to it. They're doing all the heights and the pegs and all that sort of stuff. MCU charge, the material change of use charge. op works. So there's fees all along the way. So when you go and relodge op works, so the way a subdivision works is that you go and do a DA approval, you get approval for that. Then what you go and do is an op works approval, and that's usually to do with the civil. So you're trying to get your civils approved. So they approve your civils at in theory during the sub and during the development application, but then there is a more intense approval a little bit further. So that's the op works. You've got the driveways, you've got stuff like that in there. Then you've got the building approval as well. So there's more than just the approval. So if you're thinking you're going to go do a DA, just remember that's only part one of the actual what's it called process. And the more you do it, the more you'll figure it out. This is why if you go and reverse viso 100 people's deals, you'll be able to see these applications on the council's website and you'll start to get used to the order that they're in. So go down here, infrastructure charges, $28,000. That has gone up again. So there was about 40 grand in the subdivision fees, which is there. So $40,000, which is there. State government fees. So this is like land tax. Land tax has also gone up. Everything's gone up. So 3,000. And then we have accounting fees. So 1,600 bucks. So we're doing a depreciation schedule and zero running costs and stuff like that. So we're putting all of this through zero. Then we had random stuff, so miscellaneous, so like flights, accommodation, further flights, miscellaneous. So the finance partner was from Melbourne, so he came up here a couple of times. And then also legal fees for getting the construction loan looked at. So basically lawyers the whole time, which realistically, if you're trying to get something done, a lawyer can be a pain in the ass. However, if you're trying not to lose, then a lawyer might be essential. So um, got the $6,900 there. So construction costs. So it really depends how your deal is structured. So the better your deal is, that means the less chance that you have to put in money at this point in time. So what I mean by that is that quite often if you go get a construction loan, they're either going to lend you 65% of GRV, which is gross realization value, or 80% of total development cost. And usually what they go and do is they lend you that, but whatever one is lower. So if your total development cost is $1 million and they're happy to lend you 80% of that, that means they might lend you $800,000. However, if your end value is going to be 1.4, let's just say 1.4 times 0.65 equals 910. So basically, if 65% of the GRV, so the end value, is higher than 80% of total development cost, usually the bank will try and lend you the lower amount. Another thing that you really need to keep in mind, which catches people out, including myself when I was a bit more of a beginner, is the bank won't lend you their own fees as well. So what that means is that uh, they won't lend you like their application fee, their interests, they won't lend you all that sort of stuff. So it's usually like 80% of total development cost, um, but then minus a whole bunch of money. So what we did well in this time is that because we went and did a subdivision, we bought the block from for 550 and then we split it into two. It uplifted the value to 800. So each block was now worth 400 each. And what that meant was that the lender was happy for us to put zero more dollars in, which is really, really good because now they've got an asset which is worth $800,000. That is not always the case, but if you can go and do that, that is good. And once again, the better the deal that you have, the easier it is to get away without putting in as much money. So, if yeah, it just means more equity that you've got in the deal on paper instead of cash. And remember, if you run out of cash, you are screwed unless you find more. So you need to really have this in mind. So this is where the 770 is on the what's it called? The construction. However, one thing which can really catch people out is exclusions. So what I mean by this is that if the builder has excluded landscaping, which is a very common thing that they go, okay, I'm just here to do the build. So I'm just going to build this box. And they don't do the landscaping. Quite often it would mean that you would ask them to do it, they would raise a variation, and then your lender will either fund it or they won't fund it. However, if they don't fund it, that means you're going to have to do it or you're not going to have landscaping. So, for example, the builders didn't include aircon. I can't remember why the aircon wasn't included, but we'll do the example based on that we had to pay for it. To be honest, I can't really remember. Plus the solar, plus the furniture. So we fitted it out. It cost 40 grand. So that's for 10 rooms. And redid the civil work, which is this, and then the sales contract, and then Jim's building. So that's getting a building inspector out there to go and make sure that they're doing what they're doing. They're doing what they said they're doing. So this is quite important. Is basically just because the builder might go and do stuff which is not code, right? So they've got the plans. Like, for example, we've got a project right now where the builder has gone and moved the kitchenettes around to make it easier from a, what's it called? A plumbing perspective. However, it was designed different. And then what ends up happening is that the certifier comes out and goes, hey, this isn't what was on the approved plans. You're going to have to go and change the plans. So a building inspector is someone who could pick that up and go, hey, what are you doing? You're not doing that. And basically, it's someone who does this all day, every day. You might see some guy on YouTube. He looks like Batman, goes and does building inspectors. You definitely don't want him on your site if you are a builder because he is hardcore. Um, but yeah, so all of those fees, right? So just have a look at the 771. You may have to put in 20% of that as well. So just imagine if you did put 20% in of that. Um, that would have been an extra 154,000. So I'll keep that to the side at the moment because we didn't have to. Um, Safe to allow your contingency in there as well. Just pretend that you're always using it. So on this project, we spent 17 on interest, which is really, really good. It's because it was such a cheap purchase. I think the interest rates at that point of time were what's it called? Uh 4%. It says down the bottom. It says at 5% is what we were going for, but I think it was 4%. We also paid back one of the second guy. So if you watched the video, there was a second guy involved. We paid him 15 grand at one point in time. Then we've got the council fees. So we got the 2,900. That's your rates as well. And then less taxes and stuff like that. So what this is basically what's it called? Um, Capital gains tax. You don't have to pay it. GST, you pay it along the time, and then you get it back. So GST is. I'm 99% sure that we've put that in the FISO as we've paid that over the time. Because the build cost was, no, sorry, GST on all of these other figures has already been paid. So all of these, you pay capital gains after you sell it, and you pay GST along the time. However, all of these figures, like the 846 for the build, is inclusive of GST. That's why I didn't go and put it in there. So if we come down here, we have the operating income. So this part is basically figuring out the cash flow. So if we've done it all correctly, we should have a number here, 373,000. So remember, if you had have had to put in a extra 154 for the construction, um, that would mean that you would end up with this plus this. All right, which is 527,522. So it really does count a lot about your LVR. LVR is very important. From a serviceability point of view, because we bought this house for $550,000, um, we only needed to have serviceability on the 440,000. And the biggest difference was is that we got a construction loan for the two rooming houses, which they took into accountability the rent of the rooming houses. If you were going to go and develop something which is negatively geared, then you may need more serviceability than 440. I'm not saying that you don't need the serviceability. It's just our serviceability went up as we did the deal because we went and built things with a 10% yield. So yeah, you got to keep that in mind as well. But this is quite a low serviceability type deal. So we needed either 373 if you don't have to put in the extra, which we didn't. And like that was a way, if you don't have the right conversations, you're probably going to have to put in that extra 154. But yeah, so the it's around 400 to 500 grand to do a deal like this. I want you to make sure that you have a contingency. If you've only got $500,000 and you can't get any more, you have to be very, very cautious in doing something like this. All right, guys, I am out of here.